Já disse o book. Chukua chaka. Chukua. Let's have a proper contact. Yenzeni manje.
Over to you, Ntabise.
Good evening and welcome to yet another exciting Ignite session masterclass. My name is Ntabise Ngiba and I will be your host this evening. I would like to take this time to acknowledge Archbishop P.G. Nzuza, the Reverends, Deacons, Deaconesses, and everyone who is joining us on the various platforms. Before we kickstart the session, I would like to go through the housekeeping rules and announcements. Can we all have our mics muted and video switched off, just to avoid any technical glitches during the session? Questions can be sent through the session, and I will read them when we get to the Q&A part, and they can be sent on Zoom and YouTube. I will also allow for a few individuals to raise their hands on the Zoom app so as to ask the questions themselves. A survey will be shared after the session. May I ask that we kindly take a few minutes to complete the survey. The survey will ask questions relating to the session, how you found the session, and what we can improve in the future. We are aware that we are experiencing, therefore, the session will be available on the Church of the Holy Ghost YouTube channel. Am I audible enough now?
No, we can hear you. Somebody was just not muted, so there was some noise behind, but they've muted now. You can continue.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Mudiba. We are aware that we are experiencing load shedding. Therefore, the session will be available on the Church of the Holy Ghost YouTube channel, where you can catch up on the session. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to take a moment to ask that we continue to pray for KZN and extend a helping hand where we can. Tonight, we will be having two speakers. First, we will have Ms. Mmabatho Morudi, who will be speaking on social entrepreneurship and farming, bee farming to be exact. And then we will have Mr. Mabe Mudiba, who will speak on the private sector financing for farming. The speakers will follow each other, and then we will hop onto our Q&A question. And straight after that, we will have a vote of thanks from Reverend Kupai. I will now introduce Ms. Mmabatho. Mmabatho Portia Morudi is a social entrepreneur, psychology graduate, a certified business professional, and a farmer. She is a former Dream Girls International mentor and a One Young World ambassador. She was selected as one of the top 100 brightest young minds in SA by BYM, and again as one of the emerging change makers in South Africa by Spark International. She sits as an advisor and board member in various organizations, such as the Dr. Semutswenyane Rural Development Foundation and Igalelo, and has participated in the Government of South Africa's GPME 25-year review report of democratic governance and service delivery, with the focus on vibrant, equitable, sustainable, and rural communities contributing towards food security. She co-founded the Village Market Africa, which is a social FMCG enterprise.
Okay, Nthabiseng is live. There is a church meeting.
She has 12 years experience in higher education management, having worked for various institutions of higher learning. Her work has been documented by many publications and organizations, including Forbes Africa, Forbes Women, Destiny Magazine, Virgin Unite, and Spark International. Her awards include the Roche Gold Woman of Impact Award in 2017 and Ignite Women Social Entrepreneur of the Year in South Africa 2018. Our second speaker will be Mr. Mabe Mudiba. Mabe Mudiba is originally from Limpopo and currently resides in Johannesburg. Mudiba attained a Bachelor of Commerce degree in Management Studies, majoring in Investment Finance at the University of Cape Town. He holds an honors and master's degree in agricultural management from the University of Limpopo. Recently, Mabe completed a certificate in project finance with Montreal School of Management in Netherlands and is currently pursuing his chartered finance analysis qualification. Mabe has been in the finance services field for over 6 years, providing solutions in agricultural and project finance. He worked as an agribusiness manager at FNB before moving to Nedbank as a regional manager in agriculture. He is currently a senior associate in global commodities with a focus on soft agriculture commodities within Nedbank corporate investment banking. On a day-to-day basis, he is exposed to various agricultural value chains, retail, manufacturing, and agro-processing businesses. His work involves business development, detailed organization, structuring, financial analysis, credit risk assessment, and post-deal assessment. May I kindly give Ms. Mmabatho the floor. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nthabiseng, for that introduction. I just need to share my screen. If everybody could just give me a second. Okay, to start out, let me greet the Archbishop PG Nzuza, the reverends, and all protocol observed, and everybody that's taken the time out today to join us for this session. I'm hoping that at the end of it all, if nothing else, it would have opened up somebody's mind about ideas around social entrepreneurship and why it's needed in Africa in this current life and era that we in. So my name is Mmabatho Morudi. Sorry, I'm just trying to navigate. My name is Mmabatho Portia Morudi. As Ntabiseng has already said, I'm a social entrepreneur, a beekeeper, and a conservationist. I'm going to share our journey with you today, basically around beekeeping, or what we call, or is known as apiculture, how we got into it, and social entrepreneurship, how we got into it, because I do believe that overall, a whole lot of us are familiar with entrepreneurship and being businesswomen and being businessmen, and not necessarily the different types of entrepreneurship that are available, and why personally we went the social entrepreneurship route. So I am looking forward to sharing with you. This is where our journey starts. So my career started in education. After I matriculated, I then went on to study further. At the time, I attempted a degree in graphic design and multimedia. And it was with a simple reason, the fact that I didn't want to deal with people at that point. My levels of being an introvert meant I chose that career. Besides being creative, I thought, okay, I can deal with a screen better than I can deal with people. Not knowing that life had other things intended. So what ended up happening is that within 2 years of going into multimedia and graphic design, part of my learning in school, I quit because I was anxious and I couldn't continue with the course. And then what then happened, my grandparents then said, okay, you're going to have to either start working while you're studying because we have invested this money and you've decided to quit. And then what then happened is that I started working for the University of South Africa as an Ask Me. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with your Ask Me's at universities. So it's the first years, and then you're given bibs to walk around campus, and all the first years can come to you and ask questions. This was now me having enrolled for a degree in psychology. I took on that job, and I was so good at it that I advanced from there to a point whereby at the end of it all, I found myself towards the end of my career in education, I found myself working as the head of academic services at Monash University. And then in my 5 years at Monash University, an opportunity came about at another institution in Johannesburg, a business school. This was the 1 year that I hated the work with a passion. And I realized that throughout these years that I've been working in higher education, I loved it so much. Had I stayed at Monash, I would have stayed much longer. But here's an opportunity that was presented. I couldn't resist. I left Monash and I moved over to this institution, which I thought was a mistake. But I think that was part of the purpose and the journey, because I only lasted in this job for only 1 year. So I'll leave it there. I'll continue the story shortly. Probably some of you are wondering, what is apiculture? What is beekeeping exactly? I'm here and I'm not sure what beekeeping is. So beekeeping, the scientific term is apiculture, and apiculture, api means bee, and the rest, it basically means looking after bees or hosting bees in hives for the purposes of pollination or honey. So that's the premises. If you keep hearing me referring back to beekeeping and apiculture, that's just the scientific definition, scientific name of what beekeeping is. And so our journey continues. I stayed in this job for 1 full year. I hated it with a passion, and something happened within that 1 year that led to this purpose and this journey that we're on now. My grandfather at the time was 86. I grew up on a farm. So this farm that I grew up on, we had a room where bees would settle in the ceiling. Certain time of the year, bees would settle in the ceiling, produce so much honey that the ceiling would cave in. So year in, year out, we had the same issue. bees would settle in the ceiling, produce a lot of honey, and the ceiling would cave in. So this one year in 2012, then my grandfather says, okay, I'm taking all the grandchildren for a course in beekeeping. So all grandchildren tagged along, with the old men also attending this course, because like any other family, we would try kill the bees, we would try bend tires, we would try all forms of insecticides, and nothing would work because they would keep coming back and not knowing that we are actually harming nature. So we went for this course in beekeeping, and three things were evident came out of this, is that our bee populations globally are declining. That was one, and that rural poverty was on the increase, and there was a shortage of good quality honey already in 2012. That was the reality. And when I looked at this, my first thought was, wow, there's an opportunity here. Firstly, my thing was, we're going to make so much money because there's a shortage of honey and bee populations are declining. So my approach was more from a business point of view than anything. And we set out on the journey. So the journey was quite simple. Our business model was quite simple. Host bees, so get hives, take these hives, place them on citrus farmers. I grew up in Winterveld, so we have a lot of citrus farmers in Winterveld. Ask the farmers if we could place the hives on their plots in order to assist them with bee pollination for their citrus. And some of them agreed. A whole lot of them had issues because they were just worried about having bees. A lot of us are scared of bees. But those that agreed, we set out on this journey. Amazing few years. So the first 2 years, we thrived in our business. It grew quite well, very, very quickly. And I'll come back to the slide just now. And then how social entrepreneurship happened. So within 2 years of us being in this business, 2.5 years, the business came down, and there were some lessons from that. So from a business that was doing so well to now a business that has come down significantly, and it made us look at reinventing our model. I'll share at the end some of the reasons why initially our model didn't grow. But basically, this helped us learn the art of reinvention, basically, to say, how do you go back to the drawing board? How do you make something better? So you had a vision and you put it out there, you implement it, and it didn't work out. And what was the reasons that it didn't work out? And maybe somebody's wondering, what is social entrepreneurship? What is the difference between just entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship? So social entrepreneurship for me personally was to say, how do I bring about communities? How do I use this entrepreneurship journey to solve societal issues? And that was a major shift in our business and how we did business. One realization was that as we are running this business, as it was growing, one of the issues that we experienced greatly was the fact that it was growing so much. We started with 10 hives. The hives were growing, the communities were growing. I lost confidence in the work that I thought I was capable of doing at the time. So I brought in other people to assist us. But then I realized that from the beginning, this was never meant to be just a business for one person. It involved communities for us to be able to do the work that we needed to do at the end. And hence now solving the societal issues and thinking, having a different mindset into how we were running this business completely changed. So we had our vision. How would we then start? We had this vision, and the vision was from the onset to say beekeeping, keeping bees, and then producing this honey that will meet the global shortages at the time that were being experienced. But how we then changed it up was that we then said, how do we bring in communities? So instead of me as the founder of the village market and my organization as the village market owning thousands and thousands and thousands of hives, how do we then get communities to take part in the value chain and be part of our model? And that was for us a game changer in the business. What we then started doing is that we started going out in the remotest of villages. So this is now our current model. We go out into the deep remotest of villages in Africa, go into these communities, train them in sustainable beekeeping, train them in how to coexist with nature. So basically you train them in sustainable beekeeping, train them in nature conservation, and then buying back that produce from them. So what that has done is that, one, we are saving bees because they're being hosted. The reasons why bees are dying out, I didn't touch on that. It's because one of the reasons, it's because they're losing the natural habitats. So we thought, okay, our deep remote villages, they still have their natural habitats intact. They're not using a whole lot of insecticides and pesticides. So how about they become the hosts for these beehives? So you train them, you provide them with the hives, the implements, and then you still buy back the produce from them. So what that does is that it creates sustainability and improves their livelihoods. That way it helped us because we could grow as much as we wanted to, and the communities as well were being empowered in the process. And that became our strategy going forward. It's still growing, it's still changing because no one community is the same. So the main goal is still the same, but we have found that it changes now and again when we go into the different types of communities. I have mentioned that we do educate communities in coexisting with nature. What we found in some of these communities when we go is that in order for us to be able to preserve nature, what we found is that for somebody that's looking for some honey in the forest, they would go and ban a large portion of the forest. And this is from not knowing any better, just to get to a small comb of honey, and the harvesting methods as well. That's why we say honey hunting, the harvesting methods as well. You would kill the whole colony. So a colony is that's what we would call a colony. So it destroyed nature. So by going into the communities and not even saying, stop doing what you are doing, but giving them sustainable alternatives, that's what we then focused on. And then innovation, as we continued with the same model, what we found in some of our communities, especially deep remote villages in your areas such as Mozambique, they were struggling with elephants. What would happen is that, you'd find that in these communities, some of them are part of the migratory routes from elephants crossing over. So these elephants, what they would then do is that they would damage crops, they would damage huts as they're passing through. And while we were busy reinventing our model and trying to solve societal issues, we came across a study by Dr. Lucy King. This goes back to the social entrepreneurship model that speaks about doing your research. A study about Dr. Lucy King, where they determined that bees were a natural deterrent to elephants. And therefore we started using that for human-elephant conflict in villages. So instead of just focusing on saying, okay, we're providing you with hives, we providing you with training, we wanted to even solve a greater issue that the communities were facing. And that issue was that they are afraid of elephants. So what we then started doing in partnership with elephant rhinos and people is that we started building bee fences around communities. So by so doing, you're able to save people because their livelihoods are improved. by simply harvesting the honey and selling it back to the village market. That was one. The elephants were saved as well, because now they changed their migratory routes, and there doesn't have to be any conflict and confrontation between communities and bees. And as well, the bees were being saved because their natural habitats are being preserved. And that speaks to innovation. I think if nothing else from this session today, it's to encourage our young people to start thinking out of the box. I think the days of agriculture being done as it was done back in the day are gone, and there is so much information that we can start tapping into to say, how do we make things even better? And I have found that as part of this model whereby you involve people in the work that you do, they are so vested in these initiatives that it makes it so much easier to work with them. So to date, what have we been able to do with the model that we have followed is that 11 communities livelihoods have been improved. And what that means is that we basically have been able to set up 11 bee sanctuaries between South Africa, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, and growing into other communities in South Africa, in Africa, pardon. And we have about 190 direct beneficiaries with 950 indirect and 11 full-time employees. My apologies. What I didn't ask is there an opportunity for guys to ask questions as I go?
Hi, Mmabatho. So the Q&A will come after Mr. Mudiba's presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so basically what you're seeing there, it's ladies in one of the communities. So basically them building their hives that they will set up on a beeline fence to prevent the elephants from coming into the village. So this speaks to the work that we have been doing around Africa in terms of helping them. So they make their hives, which basically means they're constructing. They learn how to make this woodwork with machinery and putting it together. Back to the village market, Africa. Those are just some of the communities. And Thabiseng, please do let me know if I'm going too fast so that I can slow down if there is a need.
All right, no problem, will do.
Just going back to speaking on innovation, one of the things that we've also found was that there were no limitations. You know, when you set your mind on doing something, I've found that you can practically do anything. We've learned that we could even train visually impaired people in beekeeping, which we have successfully managed to do. So if you set your minds on taking over the world, it's practically possible to do so. So where we're currently sitting as a business now, and I'll speak to the markets, there is still a global shortage of honey. I think over the recent years, a lot of people have seen, there's been a lot of information about fake honey, about honey that's coming from China. That has been going on for years. So here's the thing with honey. We have what we call pure honey. We've got people play around with words. You'll see on the shelves, there's pure honey, there's natural honey. We play around with words. There's irradiated honey, there's heated honey, there's blended honey. What we focused on is what we call raw honey. So that's just one of the initiatives. If you're looking at the hives, it's one of the projects that we've set up, a bee sanctuary that we've set up. Between the 11 bee sanctuaries, what they've managed to do is produce about 8.5 tons of what we call raw honey. So basically raw honey is honey that has not been tainted with any insecticides or pesticides, that's produced in deep remote villages, and it's extracted from the honeycomb and basically packaged. Nothing added to it. It has not been heated. It has not been blended. It's just extracted as is and then packaged. Currently with the honey markets, what's happening? We are consuming 3 times more than what we're producing. So there's still a huge opportunity when it comes to honey production. And bees, mind you, I must mention that bees are not just responsible for honey. There's other honey byproducts. It goes back to the innovation to say, what else can you do with this? People have seen there's your propolis, there's your royal jellies, there's wax. There are wax people are using for candles, for polish, for hair, for skincare products, so for leather. So there's a lot of opportunities that have not yet been tapped within this market. When we started, there was a claim that there was only about 50 commercial beekeepers at the time in South Africa, and most of them were known to be white, if I'm not mistaken. So there's still a massive opportunity in apiculture, basically. And yeah, just considering the global shortages of honey, it's a massive opportunity as well. African honey is also sought after globally. So why we do what we do? I do believe in our journey of social entrepreneurship, I do believe that Africa has the solutions with our natural habitats that we've got. There's a lot of untapped areas in agriculture. And if nothing else, I am hoping that young people would look at this industry and look at the opportunities and look at how do we make it better. Think where our grandparents are coming from. The way of agriculture, the way of beekeeping, the way of farming, and saying how, with all the resources that we've got now, how do we make it better? It's my grandfather once made a statement and said, with all the opportunities that we have now, he wishes he was young now because they could achieve way more than what they managed to then. So to our young people, honestly, there's markets that are untapped with beekeeping. There's also pollination services. We need bees. It was Einstein that said, without bees, mankind would have about 4 years of life. So that speaks to the importance of bees. Our bees are declining globally. It's going to take somebody to make an effort, somebody to make a decision to say, how do I play a part in protecting them for future generations? It's going to take somebody saying, how do I play a part in preserving nature in order for our pollinators to succeed? It's going to take somebody saying, I'm not going to use insecticides and pesticides because I'm trying to protect these pollinators so that we can have food. There's massive opportunities in Africa. There's absolutely a whole lot that still needs to be done that can be done. I already mentioned our honey. So our honey is sitting on the markets. It's raw, it's pure, it's natural, it's African. So what you're looking at now, I wanted to speak about excellence in what we do. So putting out products on the shelves, honey extraction in itself, there's a lot of elements that one needs to take into consideration. Cleanliness, because it's not a product that you can then say, I'm going to sterilize. So from our training methods in the communities, it takes somebody saying, we're going to do this training in terms of hygiene, food handling, how it needs to be done, because you cannot come back and say, just to make sure, let's heat it, let's irradiate it, especially when it comes to the labeling requirements. So you cannot say it's raw honey when it's actually not. You have to mention that it has been heated. And what heating sometimes does at certain temperatures, it reduces the good qualities of the honey. But I wanted to focus on excellence, what we put out there. For me, it was a matter of saying, how do we put out products on the shelves that reflect us, for one, that one is proud of, that are not mediocre? And it's a process, it's a learning curve. We got onto the retail space recently. It's not easy to have your product sitting on a shelf. It takes a lot of anxiety to make sure that by the time this product reaches the shelf, it's of high standard, good quality. But my plea would be to say, can we put products on the shelves that are of such high standards? So as we're running these businesses behind the scenes, the end product, can it be something that you can look at and say, you know, I am proud of what I've produced, what we've committed to do. At some point, we thought we needed to take a jar of our end product to each and every woman and man and all our beneficiaries, to give them as a reminder of what they're actually putting on the shelves. And it's not just the back work that's happening, but they must actually see the actual work that they're doing. Because sometimes I think people don't realize the magnitude of the work that they're doing, especially if they're working behind the scenes. If it's in the communities, they don't get to see the final product that sits on the shelves or that's received by somebody somewhere. Our facility, I did mention that we are based in Winterveld. So what we've committed to do is keep our factory bottling facility in a rural community, and we currently employ about 11 people. So these people are responsible for the training, they're responsible for the packaging. And what I've found is that when you run a business with a heart, there's always help at hand. I've found so many people coming into our business. They've stayed for years. I found a lot of volunteers that come through and they want to see it succeed because of the difference that it's making in the community. So that's just how important it is to also not just focus on our profits, but to say, how do we bring people in and run businesses with a heart? Our top 3 customers at the moment, it's Food Lovers Market. So we recently, it's been a process that took about a year, sitting on shelves. I think a session on retail, we would need a full session on that, because this was an experience in itself. Just getting your barcodes done, just getting your labels approved, just getting your working facility certifications approved. That was an eye-opener itself. I think a lot of us take it so light that, oh, I want to see my product on the shelves. But the work that happens to get a product on the shelves is quite hectic. But at this stage, we are on the Food Lovers Market shelves, and we do a lot of corporate gifting, and also your Black IQ pharmacies that we supply with our honey. Our triple bottom line, I have spoken a lot about our journey and why we do what we do. And it has been exactly this. We are focused on people, planet, and as a result, the profits have followed. I didn't explain how our business is registered. So we have a hybrid model whereby we are making profits, and those profits are put back into the villages. Hence, we're able to do the training. Hence, we're able to provide them with implements and partnering with other organizations that can fund that system. But what we have found is that the minute you are conscious of the planet, conscious of the people that you work with, conscious of communities, and then automatically your profits follow. I think in closing, I cannot not share this small snippet from A Testament of Hope, a book written by Dr. Sam Moswenyane. So when they started a bank, the African bank, an old man came and made his contribution of about 100 rands because he believed in an idea that Africans could have their own bank. And his closing and parting shot was like, this is like planting a tree. I might not be able to see it grow and enjoy its shade, but my grandchildren will be able to. And it's simply that if we start businesses in whatever that we do, you might not see the end or the growth or how far it can go, but we do it because we know that future generations will look back and they'll say they have done well, they have tried, and we can take the baton and run with it. And that's what drives me daily to say, how do I play my part in preserving Earth for future generations that they'll look back and say, by going out, the village market, going out, going into communities, training community members in preserving Africa, in preserving its natural resources, we are enjoying the benefits of that. And it's my encouragement to each and every young person that is here today to say, think beyond profits. Profits are good, but think, how am I going to make a difference with the business that I'm doing? And by so doing, you'll find that you weather the storms, whatever circumstances, because it looks good on presentations. It's hard. It's a daily struggle to keep business going. It's a daily struggle to say, when COVID hits, what happens? Do we close shop? Do we continue? But if you run a business with the heart, you find a way to weather the storms. And by so saying, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mmabatho, for sharing so much insight into the world of apiculture. I hope everyone is as encouraged as I am to start thinking out of the box and to definitely think beyond profits. Without wasting time, I will now give over to Mr. Mabe Mudiba, and after that, you will then jump into our Q&A session for both Mmabatho and Mabe. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mudiba.
Thank you, Ntabiseng. Porsha, yeah, I think that was a very good presentation. I think in terms of just walking everybody through your journey, but also just talking to, I think, the process that it all takes to get to where you are. So basically, one can have an idea of what you want to do, but you must be willing to put in the time. So thank you for sharing the journey that you've gone through. So from my side, I don't have a presentation as such, because I feel that my presentation is actually going to be very short. So as Ntabiseng gave a brief introduction in terms of who I am, I'm Mabe Mudiba. So basically, I'm in the agricultural financing space, and my work entails looking at applications for individuals that want to go into farming, that want to are either looking for working capital, looking to acquire equipment. So basically, that's what we look at. And so basically, what I want to go into is just the process that we follow in terms of what we look for from an individual that's looking to the banks for assistance, formal financial institutions. So from our side, first and foremost, we would want a business case, which talks to a business plan, not a lengthy, not a 50-page. You don't have to go out to get somebody to write this up. So if you are behind the business, we want something that gives us an overview of what you want to do or what you've been doing. So that would give us an idea of the business or give us an overview of the business case. And then another thing that we look at is projections, cash flow projections. So basically, because we're a bank and what we keep in mind is risk in terms of repayability. So we would want to see the projections around this business to say, okay, based on the research and feasibility study that one might have done, what looking into the business for the next 5 years or the next 10 years, how do you see this business doing? And obviously giving us your assumptions. So this would all be inclusive in your business plan. So that's something that we would evaluate in terms of to say, okay, if the bank is to extend a certain amount of money, where you'd have to repay a capital amount, an interest portion amount, would this business be able to repay the contribution of the bank into this business? So that would be the second. And then obviously we'd also look at the background of the individuals in terms of expertise. For example, you'd have individuals who go into maybe poultry production. That would be chicken production for off-taking into your shop rights. Does the individual running this business, are they knowledgeable about chicken production? Do they know about diseases that might be prevalent in running an operation as a poultry operation? Who's manning the floors where this operation is happening? So we would want that kind of background in terms of individuals that are looking after this operation. And lastly, would also look at the potential security. So security is always an issue for emerging farmers. With commercial farmers, you'd find that maybe it might not be such an issue if they've been operating and they've got a history and they are willing to commit certain collateral to the bank. So normally we would want to look at security. What I mean by that is what else? So if you're looking to the bank to put money in your business, what are you bringing into the business? So it can't just be a situation where you say, no, I'm passionate. I really love agriculture, but you're not putting anything down. So the bank would always, any bank you go to would always look at a situation where you want 1 million to fund your business. The bank would say to you, we can look at 60% being 600,000, and the 400,000 would need to come from you. So it will always be a situation where the individual coming to the bank looking for assistance, that you are also investing something, because should anything go wrong, the bank doesn't want to be the only entity losing money or being the only entity invested in this business. So normally that's the approach that we normally look at. And other aspects which Porsha also mentioned, to say, when we evaluate the business case, we also want to see the social aspect of it. So looking at the triple bottom line, the social aspect of it, to say, is this project going to create employment? Is it promoting sustainable practices within agriculture? So Porsha mentioned something about having to look to communities that are so remote that that they're not using pesticides and insecticides. So therefore, the quality of the product that they are delivering, they can actually stand behind it in terms of saying that this is raw honey. It hasn't been affected in any way. So the bank right now, there's also quite a big drive in terms of sustainable practices. So that's something that would also look at in your business case, to say, are you conscious in terms of working with the environment, working with the community to make sure that you're creating something that's sustainable and is not going to actually impact the rest of the agricultural spectrum in an adverse way? And then another thing also, again, saying, okay, fine, to say, okay, you've got the social aspect in terms of employment, you're looking at sustainability, and then also now to say, but the economic benefit now, will people be better off as a result of this business. So normally that's the approach that that the bank looks at in terms of just being able to come out and partner with individuals. So I think as individuals, either like before, from my experience, what works for individuals is that sometimes you do need a proven concept. So a proven concept meaning that either this business exists somewhere else, you've seen it running, and then you can actually walk us through the process to say, I've kind of seen this process and understand the ins and outs in terms of maybe even expertise, or being partner with people that have the expertise, but you can actually explain the business to the bank to say, I'm aware of the risks that come with this business, and this is how I'll go about mitigating. Because from a banks or financial institutions, so if I'm talking about financial institutions, I'm not only talking about the banks, but I'm also talking about your land banks, which are private institutions, but obviously with the backing of the state, and looking at DFIs who also do look very favorably to agriculture, but they will expect the same kind of requirements from the banks. So we kind of look at these deals with a similar eye in terms of a risk mitigating eye, and having individuals that have actually done their homework as far as the finance aspect, because the finance is just one aspect of the business. But in terms of the operation of the business, being able to forecast how well this business will do, the risk that you might run into either locally or internationally. So those are some of the things that, when the banker is talking to you or talking to an individual who's looking to go into agriculture, we want to make sure that you understand those aspects as well. So if I'm looking at an application and then we schedule a meeting, and I'll definitely have lots and lots of questions as a banker would, in terms of just making sure that the bank's money is protected, and ensuring that the individual who's reaching out to us actually understands the landscape, or the agricultural landscape, or the field that they're wanting to go into. So that's just some aspects that the business finance would entail in terms of individuals approaching the banks. But I think as I think the moral here, as also Porsha touched on, and I think also from the church, looking to the youth, to say agriculture is definitely a space to pursue. There's lots of opportunities. I think opportunities from those that want to study agriculture, so agricultural sciences. So agricultural sciences, knowing that if you're studying agricultural sciences, one thing that you have to keep in the back of your mind, that you're not only limited to go into the agricultural, like to say, practice in itself. There's also opportunities in economics. I studied agricultural economics, which my background is more finance, but I found a path which aligned with agriculture. So the middle point for me was agricultural economics. So there's the aspect of going into agriculture, and there's also an aspect of going into finance and economics using agriculture. So for those studying agriculture or wanting to pursue agriculture, I think there's quite a lot of opportunity. And then in the practice of agriculture, don't feel limited. I think right now there's actually quite a big drive in terms of getting the youth back into agriculture, because I think even from my side of the world, from a banking perspective, we know that agriculture has been very unpopular to the youth, because I think when young people have considered agriculture, they compare it to what our grandparents were doing, and it's not very aligned with. You can't go to I think in this modern day, if you live in the city, you don't see a space for agriculture. But I think, consider this, I think one of the things that also encouraged me to go into the space is that we are all, if we're all living in the city, we still need food, we still need resources, be it our clothing. So clothing meaning that's cotton, that's wool, And then food, obviously, that's all, agricultural commodities. So we're all living in the city, but somebody must produce this, all these commodities, all these things must still keep people going. So how does a people go forward without agriculture? So agriculture will always be a part and parcel of our life. And you look at your ShopRites, your retailers, your clothing stores, they are like, without farmers, we wouldn't have ShopRite, wouldn't be there. And we are not at an age where artificial intelligence, we are consuming like pills that that contain all the nutrients for man to survive. So we are still far from like a future where agriculture is not going to be a part of our lives. So the way youth would consider any career, the way you'd consider being a chartered accountant, being a lawyer, I think agriculture will not be removed from that equation. It will always be a part and parcel as long as we exist. So that's something that definitely requires, I think, if with a little bit of research, and identifying what you're passionate about within the agricultural space, as I mentioned, that it's very broad. Right now, just to give you an example, I've moved away from financing actual agricultural production. I've moved into a space where now we are financing the moving of agricultural products cross-border. So we're financing individuals that are exporting and importing agricultural products. So even in that space, when you go into agriculture, you don't only have to look into the domestic market. So even for yourself, Porsha, to say, the banks are looking to get behind individuals that are looking towards the international markets, where the banks want to stand behind those individuals to say, we are willing to stand behind projects that have a greater reach. So the opportunities are definitely there. And I would also advise the youth that's on this platform to say, create LinkedIn profiles, look into individuals that are in the agricultural space, reach out to them. On this platform, you have myself and Porsha, who you can definitely reach out to, but I would advise that, you create those LinkedIn profiles, reach out to individuals that are doing amazing things in the agricultural space on LinkedIn. And, you just request the individual to say, I'm interested in going into the space, 30 minutes of your time or 15 minutes of your time. Please tell me a little bit more about what you do. And I think that information of talking to individuals that are in agriculture will definitely enlighten and definitely show you how, unlimited the opportunities are. So I think that's my input to this platform, but I'm definitely open to, even after this discussion, to actually engage with some of the youth in terms of those that are looking to go into banking, those that are looking to go into agri as a business, in terms of just guiding you along the process, given that one has walked the path in terms of the value chain. So I think that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mudiba. Again, I hope we are all encouraged and more motivated now to tap in or rather pursue farming, knowing that there are finance opportunities available and that obviously there would be certain expectations or requirements from our side in order to be eligible for the financing. And thank you again for willing to avail yourself to the youth. Now the interesting part, Q&A. So I will open up the floor to anyone who would like to ask a question, either for Mmabatho or for Mabe. So what we'll do is that you can send them via YouTube on the comments box, and then my team will just then send them on WhatsApp, and then I'll read them out to the respective speaker. Alternatively, if you want your voice to be heard, you can just raise your hand on the Zoom platform, and then I will award you the opportunity to ask the question yourself. So the floor is open. I don't know if we have any hands on the Zoom app, because I've got a question on my side. Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'll read the question that I have on my side. This one is for Mmabatho, and it reads, regarding challenges in terms of entry in the deep rural communities, which might still be traditional and with highly protected or safeguarded systems, for example, chiefs, local authorities, etc. How did they break financing? Does the organization assist with both training and equipment? And how do they build accountability from those communities? In other words, what is your financial contribution towards the project? So I'm assuming that's 2 questions, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you got that, Mmabatho, or if you'd like me to repeat it.
I've got it.
All right, perfect. So I think we will tackle one question at a time.
So starting with the tribals, that's the first point of contact in each community that we go into. So you cannot go in and start working without actually speaking to the chiefs, to the ndunas in all our communities, even with the CPAs. So that's the first point of entry. And if that cannot be settled, then we are not able to proceed, because you need buy-in from them first, and then it's easier to work with communities. And what I've found over the years is that they're willing to listen. There has been communities where you go in and people are suspecting, people are not really trusting. So it takes time to build trust. I have gone into communities that I didn't know a soul in, but because I saw the potential, it was more about having discussions first with the tribal councils and getting that out of the way, and then only then do you engage with the communities. And I've also found that what works is that you don't go into the communities and pick the people that you want to work with. We tend to sort of leave it to tribal and the community meetings to then say, these are the individuals that will represent us or will be responsible for the initiative. And yeah, it works. But in most communities, it starts there first and foremost. And moving on to the second question, I hope I've answered that one adequately. In terms of funding, so what tends to happen with communities is that when we go in, we provide the training and we provide the implements. And how this is generally at times funded, when we started, we self-funded that process just to get going, especially when you go into a community and you realize that there's a lot of potential in a certain community. We would then, we've gotten to a point where at times we would take our own hives and supply to communities just to get them going and just to show them that this thing is going. But over the years, what we have found is that a lot of international donor support that we've gotten, whereby they can allocate certain funds to the communities to work with. And in terms of accountability, it goes back to engagements with these communities. So our training is not limited to nature conservation and beekeeping. So you have to take them through the processes of financial management, through the processes of working together as cooperatives, which is mostly the system that we tend to go for. It doesn't always work, but we found that the more you engage these communities and they take a lot of ownership for the initiative when they start realizing that this thing is actually making an income. We've had communities saying, no, we've found security for our own hives because this has brought so much improvements into our lives. Thanks, Habs.
Thank you so much, Mmabatho. I think everything was clear. If there is a follow-up, I think they will then just send follow-up questions, but I believe everything was clear. This one is for Mr. Mudiba, and the question reads, since it's clear that banks need a certain portion from the applicant, what is the role of the Department of Agriculture in terms of being surety, such as providing a loan on behalf of the project? Is there a way that the banks can forge such a relationship or initiative with the banks on behalf of those viable candidates?
Okay, that's a very good question, and saying. So as I mentioned, that sometimes it is a limitation in terms of not having adequate security for the amount that one requires in terms of debt finance. So what the banks are doing now, and from also the department, is offering grant funding, which would form the equity component that the bank would normally look to the individual or the entity that's applying. So at the moment, I know that Land Bank has had such an initiative, but I know that Land Bank, I don't know if everybody is aware that obviously Land Bank at the moment, they are having quite a bit of challenges in terms of just coming back in terms of, being able to offer the services that they were initially offering. So there are a bit of challenges there, but the banks, the private banks are also looking at initiatives where together with the department, because the department is pushing agriculture to quite an extent now to say, trying to get more and more emerging farmers or individuals, youth, women into agriculture. So there is a scheme that's we are currently busy with at Nedbank. I think the other banks are also part of the process, be it Standard Bank, ABSA, where the government is coming in and putting in a component of finance, which would be grant finance. So the department would, if an individual approached the Department of Agriculture, inquire about this program where they've partnered with the banks, and this program would look at the department coming in with a portion of equity. So, for example, if your project that you're looking into costs 10 million, maybe you want to go into cattle farming, the department could say to you that we are willing to put in maybe 30% or 40%, which is equity. And that equity, what that equity allows you to do is go to the banks now, because that equity allows the individual to say, this is what the department has put behind me, provided that you meet the requirements. I'm not sure of those requirements that would be required from the department, but the bank would, look at that quite favorably if there is equity in the business. So as Nedbank, I know that we're in discussions with the Department of Agriculture to put in the scheme. That should kind of manifest this year, because we've been working on it since last year. But I would advise that, whichever community that individuals find themselves in, to start with the Department of Agriculture and find out if they are involved in these schemes, because so the schemes are not uncommon. The Land Bank used to have the scheme where if individuals don't have collateral or security, the department would be willing to, depending if the individual meets those requirements, put equity as a form of a grant. So that grant would be an equity component, which allows individuals to go to banks and apply for debt financing. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mudiba. I believe everything is clear. I've got another question for Mmabatho, and this one reads, with respect to ESG, understanding that you have covered the economic and social aspect, what are the corporate governance strategies that you have in place?
So in terms of our governance strategies, it's still work in progress. So what we've done with the business is that when we started out, with the new model, the focus was on community work, was on getting supplier networks, because with honey, it's a volumes game. So we focused on saying, how do we build communities so that we can have the volumes that we need? And now we've recently moved over to the second phase, where now governance is playing a critical role in saying, how do we start by building a team that's good, everybody that's required for the job. Each person knows what the strong points are. And I had to start by looking within and saying to myself, what are my strong points? And what I found was that working with communities was my strong points. And now we've had to bring in, a CEO to say, we need somebody that's looking into the business part of things, looking into governance, looking into HR processes. We currently have 11 employees. How do we make sure that our tax issues are in order and that our finances are in order? And I wasn't that person to do that. I was more the person to focus on going out into the communities. So it's really about looking into your strong points and focusing on that. So we've just recently brought in a CEO that's focusing on all our governance issues going forward in the business.
Thank you so much, Mmabatho. I see we've got a hand. Vusmuzi Dube, you can unmute your mic and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mangib. And also thank you for the presentation. It's a really good presentation. And I think it's very informative, especially with apiculture. I didn't know that you could actually do something with bees, I know that when you see bees, you run away. But it's really interesting because I think my question to Mmabatho would be, she spoke about potential when she looks at communities, and then should start having conversations with chiefs, Nenduna, and all of those people into starting apiculture in those communities. With that word specifically, potential, would you then say you'd have to find a specific land to be able to perform apiculture, or is it just any land? Because I'd probably have land available, but is my land or my community a community that can be able to perform apiculture? That's the question for Mmabatho. And I think for Umapi, my question would be, do I need debt security, which means a portion of something that I've saved or a portion of my investment for the bank to say, if you lose, or if our investment or if our loan with you does not work out, then the bank should not be the only one that loses. Do we still need debt security in a proven business or proven industry, maybe like a franchise? Maybe I'm trying to franchise a ShopRite or a restaurant like Nando's or anything like that. Do I still need something like that? Because I'm really looking at the fact that if you're talking about the youth and you're talking about debt security, it becomes really hard to say, I've saved up so much to be able to cover that. So do we still look at debt security even if the industry or the business that I'm trying to tap into is already proven? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. So it's a good question, and I realized that I didn't cover the types of areas that you can actually do beekeeping. So there is what we call urban beekeeping that can be done in case of people that have land in urban areas, but there's always bylaws. So municipal bylaws are quite important, and you're very limited, especially if you want to go commercial, if you were to do it in an urban setting. That's one. Most things that we're looking for the land that we want to use as basically land that has a lot of foraging, so that your bees have food, basically foliage that they can feed from. That's the first thing you consider. Obviously, things like insecticides and pesticides play a big role. It wouldn't be ideal to take your beehives into a farm whereby they use harmful insecticides and pesticides, even though there's a lot of foliage there. But that would mean you killing your bees and you having tainted honey. So land itself, you can have a very small space, and one, you don't have to own that land. So basically going into partnerships with people that have the land, farmers that have land, communities that have land, and then placing hives, depending on the model that you're going for, going into agreements to place the hives. The main thing is bylaws, checking your bylaws wherever you have your land. We also have what we call assisted beekeeping, which means that type whereby if you don't have enough forage, you start planting crops like your butternuts and stuff that flowers that will aid your bees to have enough foliage. So the main thing is really about your bylaws, community or municipal bylaws in that specific area, to see if they, for beekeeping, and how many number of hives can you keep in a certain space. Does that answer the question? I think it's smooth.
Thank you very much for that. So yeah, I think that does answer my question.
Yeah, so to look at the second question that you asked, Zumuzi, I think just before I answer your question, I must just mention, Mmabatho, to say we've got a hive that we are still trying to attract a swarm, and we've used some lemongrass oil, and still not. Still waiting for the bees to come and nest, but we can. That'll be off topic. We can chat that offline.
No, true. I'll have to find out where it is, and obviously we're not in swimming season now, so there's quite a lot of factors that could.
100%. I just wanted to throw that in there in case anybody else is also trying to capture a swarm. So just to get back to Musi's question. So I think when you do have a proven concept, like a franchise, be it your ShopRite, your KFCs, your petrol stations, the security component won't be that high, because obviously what a franchise comes with, it comes with equipment, it comes with a lot of tangible things that the bank can look towards. But obviously the homework or the bulk of the work will be up to you in terms of getting that license to actually franchise. So for you approaching the bank, you would have had to have had the communication with the the franchisor, you being the potential franchisee. So by the time you come to the bank, we know that, if you're gonna look into a ShopRite or a petrol station, we know that there's certain things that the bank can attach. So the contribution there would be much less than us going into a farming project together, because as I mentioned, most of the banks would look at a situation where the individual will have to at least provide 40%, between 30 and 40% of owner's contribution or equity, and the bank would be willing to look at 60 to 70% where they can put in the debt component. But on a franchise model, it can be anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on the type of franchise. So the onus becomes on the individual to have done the homework or the legwork in terms of just, having done the research, having gotten in touch with the franchisor in terms of the requirements thereof. So that's definitely a better model, because by the time the franchisor gives you a license or feel that what you're proposing is actually worth their while in terms of location, what you plan to do, the feasibility study that one would have done in terms of where you want to set up that franchise store, that they would be able to get enough traction to be able to cover. Because I mean, another thing that you have to keep in mind with a franchise is that you'd be looking at a component that you are paying back to the franchise or the franchisor, and then you'd be looking at a component that you'd have to pay back to the bank, however small the amount that you've requested from the bank. So obviously that business case needs to make sense to both parties if they are willing to go in this partnership. It becomes a partnership. So you would have needed to have done the groundwork to show that there's enough traction for you to be able to actually deliver on the sales that the business is actually projecting. I hope that answers your question.
It does a lot. It's completely clear.
Thank you, Mmabatho. Thank you, Mr. Mudiba, and thank you, Vusi, for those questions. This one goes out to Mmabatho. I think when you concluded your talk, you mentioned that we need to sometimes look beyond profit, but I've got a question here relating to profit, and the question reads, how profitable is an apiculture business? Mmabatho, you are still muted.
Okay.
Yes,
sorry.
There we go.
I wanted to also just clarify that profits are good. So there's nothing wrong with profits because they help us make the work happen. It is very profitable. If you look at honey sales now, I mean, you're looking at about, people are selling a kg for 250 on the retail markets. So it is quite profitable. And I think what makes it even better is the fact that there is a shortage of honey. So that allows you to be able to play around with your pricing, and packaging is also important. So I've found that the better packaging you have, the better price you can put it in. But it's quite a profitable business. If I was to share in terms of our margins, it's great. It just needs volumes, and that takes quite a bit of work.
All right, thank you so much. And then I've got another question for you, and it reads, what support have you received since you started apiculture from the Department of Agriculture and the government at large?
Wow, it's an interesting question. So up until recently, we just recently, first time since starting in 2012, we've received some equipment from government. What I failed to disclose during the presentation is that I found over the years that if you start the work and everybody else follows, but we have mostly found support from private sector and international donors, and that was simply based on our model. So our triple bottom line, that Mudiba mentioned it, that the fact that we try to focus, bring everything together, so the planet, the people, and profits, that was attractive to a lot of private organizations and also international donors. But from government, first support came most recently. I'm talking about, it's been a month now that we received some industrial equipment from them.
All right, thank you. And then I've got the last question for the night. I don't see any hands raised up. And this one also goes to Mmabatho. So it's two different questions, but I think they tie up together because they speak to challenges. So the first one would be, with the current global warming and environmental challenges that we are facing today, what impacts have you seen in bee farming? And what are you doing to mitigate the various challenges that come with these environmental issues? And then maybe just to add on the other question, which speaks to challenges, is that what are some of the challenges that you have encountered as a Black female starting a business in a male-dominated industry?
Okay. Just to go to the climate change challenges first in terms of beekeeping. So when we started, we already knew that bees were dying out in America. So for us was to say, how do we then reverse that, even though Africa is not as affected as yet, but how do we stop it in its tracks? And it was really about how do we preserve our natural habitats. But what we found is that the rains, what do you call this thing? Your Idai, the cyclone Idai, we've got a project at the border of Mozambique and South Africa. That project was flooded at some point. So what then happens with beekeeping is that the more it rains, obviously the bees will stay in the boxes and they'll start feeding up on the honey that they're storing. So your production will then go down. So in terms of weather patterns, they've definitely changed, and we've seen a whole lot more colder patterns and not as much flowering that will impact on your production, because bees need your flowers in order to survive. So that has been the main thing with the floods damaging hives as well. Production goes down a bit, but the more we introduce other crops, then we can actually mitigate that. The practices, what we do as well, like migratory, we try and avoid migratory beekeeping, whereby we move our hives up and down just to save the bees. But sometimes you end up forced to do that because of the weather patterns. But we try and keep it as consistent and stable as possible. That was one. And then the challenges in a male-dominated industry, I found access to information, first-hand information was a bit of a challenge in the beginning. And then also buy-in, because this was an industry that we came in and not a lot of people knew much about it. So willingness to assist, especially at the beginning. And I think this links to the government question as well. I think the willingness to assist in the beginning, there was a bit of reluctance because it was something that's not commonly done. So yeah, we found it, we had to walk a long part of the journey by ourselves and doing the work just to prove that it can be done. So we had to do quite a bit of work, legwork in the beginning, just to prove. So it's one thing to have a business plan, but we found the more we could physically show people what it is, what it involves, and the benefits, and taking them to the communities, showing them the extraction and the bottling, and then buy-in started. And the more we spoke about it, the more young people got involved, the more people got involved in this beekeeping thing. And now it's a booming industry, and even government is taking more part in it now to assist beekeepers. So yeah, the buy-in was a challenge in 2012 and beyond. More international donors were willing to get involved. Thank you, Ntabise.
Thank you so much, Mmabatho. I think we've come to the end of this exciting Ignite session. I believe we can all say we've walked away with so much information, so much insight. I think we've learned a lot of things today. And thank you again to Mr. Mudiba. Thank you to you, Mmabatho, and all the best with navigating into the parts of Africa. Thank you so much to Mr. Mudiba for willing again to reach out to the young ones, offering yourself. And then I also just would like to remind everyone about the survey that I mentioned earlier on, just so that we get feedback on how you found the session and what other topics we can cover in the upcoming sessions. I will now give over to Reverend Kubai to give us the vote of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ntabi, for such a wonderful hosting. You've really done a great and a wonderful job. Firstly, I just want to greet His Grace, our Archbishop. I want to greet the reverends, deacons and deaconesses, all our members, those that are connecting via Zoom and on our YouTube channel, and of course, our guests, Ms. Murudi and Mr. Mudiba. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk, a presentation that you've shared with us this evening. And on behalf of the church leadership, I want to take this opportunity to really thank you for your time and for sharing with us. I truly believe that what you've shared this evening will really or has really benefited our young people, has really benefited our members. I did see that a lot of people were coming in and getting disconnected, possibly because of load shedding, and I hope that they can catch up on the session on our YouTube channel. One of the reasons why we sort of chose this topic, which you've really done justice to it and went beyond our expectation, is exactly what you actually touched on when you spoke about, that agriculture is one of those industries that are looked down upon by young people, but also most Africans, perhaps because of how it has been packaged and how we understand it. But I think from the session, I hope that a lot of young people are going to really, be excited about this. I'm really excited about bee farming and apiculture, something I've learned. And thanks for the financing part, because I think the idea was that not only talk about agriculture or apiculture, but talk about if you then want to consider this, how do you then go about it in terms of financing? And I think you've really complemented each other in terms of just bringing that up. And so really, really, truly, we thank you so much. I think, Ms. Murudi, as you said, there's a lot of untapped opportunities and a lot of innovative solutions that we can actually provide for food security, but also that we can really expand on this. You touched on retail, which I want to hold on to your word and saying we'll definitely have to invite you to talk about retail. You spoke about the lessons that you've learned, so around packaging, distribution, and just getting your product into the market. So would really love to keep this relationship going and want to engage with you on your experiences and learn from you as we have learned this evening. And so to the organizers that have engaged with you, we'll definitely keep in touch, and we hope to keep this relationship going. Mr. Mudiba as well, I think, like you said, the banks are coming up and also coming to with schemes that definitely for young people that might say, look, we don't have financing, how do you go about it? I think there's a lot of discussions that we need to have, a lot of young people that are interested but don't know how to do that. And so definitely we'll have to also engage in terms of how do then help young people build a business case. Like you said, there is a need for a business case. There's a need for a study. How do you do that? How do you do research? What is it that you look at when someone brings up their application? So I think we'll definitely have to dive into those details when times allows. But truly, thank you so much. And I also want to just also extend a thank you to our audience, people that connected on the platform. Very great questions that came through. So yeah, thank you for really engaging and participating. We will obviously be continuing with these sessions as we look at industries that will benefit young people. We know that the youth unemployment is very high in South Africa, and we are hoping that the session tonight has really sort of opened up avenues and opportunities that you can consider. And we'll definitely be looking for more opportunities. And if there are industries that you would want us to perhaps also organize, we are open to have those discussions and have the relevant people to talk to us on those topics. But otherwise, thank you so much. Thanks again to our guests for really honoring our invitation. And we are truly honored, and may God bless you. Thank you so much. Back to you, Ntabiseng. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rev Kubai, for the vote of thanks. I don't have much on my side, just a reminder about the questionnaire or survey. I've seen it, it's already been posted on our church worship groups, and I believe it's also been posted on YouTube under the comments. So please just take a few minutes to complete it. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.